Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching our presentation today. I'm Eun Jung-an, a doctoral student from Applied Linguistics, teaching Korean language as a teaching assistant. I'm excited to share our project conducted by Dr. Ha-Gyun Lee and myself with you. Today, we'll discuss our project titled Beyond Stereotypes, examining diversity, social justice, and inclusivity in Korean language education. Today, I'll begin by sharing how we started this project, including its purpose and background. Then, I will discuss the method and data analysis. In the second half of this presentation, Dr. Lee will continue with the study's results, discussion, and pedagogical implications. Let's begin with the background of our study. There has been an increasing amount of dynamic research on teaching materials and textbooks used in language classes, including both English as a second language and foreign language settings. Those recent studies all highlight the significance of analyzing teaching materials. So, the purpose of our study is threefold. First, we aim to evaluate the textbooks Korean for Overseas Koreans 2020, which are community school textbooks across diverse linguistic communities. Second, we try to meet the needs of growing recognition of the importance of inclusive language learning and teaching. We also believe it is essential to take a more critical approach to promote equity and inclusion in K-12 language classrooms because the majority of textbook analysis to date have focused on college-level courses. The theoretical background of our study is grounded in the current state of DEI in language education. Numerous studies highlight the growing recognition of the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in language education. This awareness underscores the need for inclusive language learning and calls for a more critical approach to curriculum development to foster equity and inclusion in language classrooms. ActFul 2016 also highlight diversity and intercultural competence are qualities that must be embraced in the US and throughout the world. Our study applies the principles of CRP, Critical Race Pedagogy, to evaluate K-12 Korean community school textbooks. Critical Race Pedagogy is an approach to teaching race-related social, political, and psychological issues through the lenses of critical race theory that sees racism as a systematic bias rather than solely being demonstrated by individuals with prejudices. So, through the lens of critical race pedagogy, we examine the textbooks to see how these materials address or fail to address issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So let me give you some contextual information of this study focusing on DEI in Korean language education. Firstly, considering the language ideology in the US, Korean is recognized as a minority language here, which influences how it is perceived and taught. Despite this, there has been a rapid growth of Korean courses and programs for free pre-college and K-12 students. This increasing interest highlights the need to examine how these programs address DEI. Traditionally, the focus in these programs has been primarily on teaching the language itself, with an emphasis on language acquisition over cultural competency, particularly in lower level classes. This approach often overlooks the importance of integrating cultural and social competency into language education. We must also consider the context of Korea itself. Historically, Korea has been an homogeneous society with a strong emphasis on national unity and identity. While Korea is becoming more diverse, it still lacks significant efforts towards anti-racism and diversity. To achieve our goal of this study, we employed a critical discourse analysis framework. Critical discourse analysis views language as a social practice that can empower individuals and social groups. It is a powerful tool for analyzing language use, especially in educational contexts. Applications of CDA are widespread, particularly in textbook analysis. Many studies have effectively used CDA to explore socio-political issues and ideologies embedded in educational texts. Our focus areas include the social positioning of Koreans and Korean culture, as well as the linguistic and cultural ideologies present in language textbooks. By examining these aspects, we aim to uncover how these texts represent and potentially shape the identities and perceptions of Korean learners. In our study, we use a CDA framework through the lenses of CRP and DEI approach. CDA is an effective analytical tool for examining how texts can portray and shape social realities through both verbal and nonverbal components such as images, language, and culture. This comprehensive approach allows us to critically evaluate the content of K-12 Korean community school textbooks, ensuring they promote a more inclusive and equitable educational environment. Now, to give you a better sense of these textbooks, let's take a look at the cover pages of the textbooks used in our study. What do you find interesting in these examples? As you look at these cover pages, what initial impressions do you have about the content and themes of these textbooks? How inclusive these textbooks might be? Here's the method of our study. First, I'd like to share information about the textbooks we used. The textbooks are titled Korean for Overseas Koreans, 재외 동포를 위한 한국어, which were published in 2020. They were developed by the Ministry of Education, the National Institute of International Education, and the International Korean Education Foundation. The authors vary across levels, and they were comprised of Korean language experts, including professors from various universities and colleges in Korea. There are 12 books in total, covering one level per semester. These textbooks are specifically designed for Korean language learners in Korean community schools, which are found worldwide. According to the Overseas Koreans Agency in 2023, There are 1,460 Korean community schools in 47 countries, including 705 in the United States. Additionally, the Korean Education Center in Atlanta reports that there are 47 Korean community schools in Georgia as of 2024. So these textbooks are used as supplemental materials in dual language immersion schools as well. To give you more detail about the textbook, the 1 to 3 level textbooks are designed for lower level elementary schools. The 4 and 5 level textbooks target children and adolescents. The level 6 focuses on adolescent learners. All the levels are designed to cover 16 units within a semester in Korean community schools. Let's go over the analysis procedure we followed in our study. The analysis focuses on the representations of images, language, and culture within these textbooks, examining how these representations align with or diverge from the principles of DEI. A total of 4,388 images across all textbook levels are analyzed, along with 892 texts, including dialogues, exercises, and reading and writing passages. Additionally, 168 culture sections were examined to assess how ideological or cultural elements were represented. To systematically analyze these elements, the data were classified into three main categories: images, language, and culture and ideologies. The image category included all visual representations inserted in the textbooks, such as illustrations, photographs, and drawings that depict people, settings, and culture symbols. The language category encompasses linguistic expressions throughout the textbooks, including dialogues, instructions, and reading passages. The culture and ideology category focused on embedded ideas and implications related to cultural representations, identity, and power dynamics in the textbooks. Data were classified under a category with topic, keywords, notes, and page number. The first round of analysis, two researchers each analyzed half of the textbooks. In the second round, we switched and reviewed the other half of the textbooks. This cross-review process helped ensure that both researchers had a comprehensive understanding of all the materials and provided an opportunity to cross-check and verify the findings. So these are examples of data analysis spreadsheets. Image, language, and culture.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the result of this study. First of all, I'm going to talk about the images of the textbook. So the characters in this textbook are preliminarily limited to the Caucasians as well as Koreans. So with the noticeable absence of individuals from the other diverse cultural background. So this lack of racial diversity is concerning as it does not reflect the multicultural world where the potential students live. And here are the example of the textbook characters. As you can see, there are different characters in different levels. But it shows the different types of characters introduced in each level, and it consider different ages, degrees of details for describing the characters. However, by failing to include a broader range of cultural or racial representations, the textbook missed the opportunity to promote inclusivity and broaden student understanding of global diversity. So this limited portrayal could reinforce a narrow view of culture and identity rather than encouraging appreciations of the rich variety of experiences and perspectives presented in today's interconnected world. And second, we also analyzed the gender bias in this textbook. The textbook images also reflect the gendered portrayal of different activities, with the sports-related images exclusively featuring male students, while female students are noticeably absent from these scenes. So the images, in contrast, the images of students engaged, as you can see in the next slide, in the sedentary hobbies, such as painting, watching TV, or reading, predominantly feature female students, as you can see in this captured examples. So this obviously reinforces the traditional gender stereotype and suggesting that certain activities are more suitable for one gender over another. Next example is the about the images about family. So the photos in this textbook predominantly describe a stereotypical family structure, like considering a parent and one or two children, and they do not reflect diversity of family forms that exist in the society today. So furthermore, only Korean families are represented in the textbook, and which fails to account for the wide range of family structure and cultural background found in the global communities. Addressing this representation gap is essential to ensure that educational materials are inclusive and reflect the varied identity of students and respect the rich diversity of experiences they bring to the classrooms. Here are more examples you can see. Also, the language included in the textbook reveal a limited representation of, diversity. Um, so particularly in the character names and nationality and cultural references. So first, the name of the characters in the dialogue and reading passages are predominantly Korean or Western. And the restricting exposure to the broader range of identities, this pattern is especially evident in self-introduction exercise in level 1, where students are typically introduced to characters from only a few select countries, disregarding the existence of the multicultural background. So as a result, the learners may develop a narrow perspective of who engaged with the Korean language. And also, gender bias is another significant issues observed across the multiple level of the textbook, particularly in the description of the hobbies and activities and family roles. So in this textbook, from level 1 to 3, male characters are more frequently described engaging in active outdoor activities, such as like playing soccer or meeting friends in a park, whereas the female characters are often shown engaging in a passive indoor activity, such as watching TV. So the contrast in activities reflect traditional gender norms or expectations, and also the contrast activities, and also this example really positioning boys as a socially and physically active, while girls remain in more isolated and sedentary roles. Last, the descriptions of personal aspirations and ability further reinforce gender expectation, as you can see the examples here. Another ideological issue found in the textbook is the assumption that a person's physical appearance correlated with their ability to speak a language fluently. So, as you can see, this example, Michael speaks Korean so well that if you only heard him speak, you wouldn't know he was a foreigner. So, in this example, implies that Korean fluency is, unexpected for those who do not physically appear Korean. Such framing reinforces the idea that language proficiency is inherently linked to the ethnicity or nationality rather than being a skill that anyone can acquire through learning and practice. So for international learners of Korean, this representation may contribute the perception that non-Korean speakers are inherently outsiders, even if they attain high level of Korean proficiency. Also, many examples found in this textbook show the interdependency between the images and languages, as in this slide. For example, beautiful princess is dancing, handsome prince is singing, and it has the gender perception or prejudice is embedded in these examples. And next example shows the analysis that related to the significant lack of cultural diversity in the textbook. So particularly in level 5 and 6, where there is a sharp decline in activities that promotes the learning of different cultures. So the focus became almost entirely on Korean culture, which is presented solely from a Korean perspective without consideration of how it might be perceived from different and global viewpoint. Additionally, the cultural section do not accurately reflect the growing diversity of contemporary Korean society, which is increasingly shaped by various cultural groups. So this results in narrow, biased representation of Korean culture that does not acknowledge um, its evolving nature. Also, the language textbook's portrayal of certain groups, particularly the ethnic groups, through the expression such as 불쌍하지요, meaning isn't it pitiful, and 소외된 사람들, meaning the marginalized people, and 자원봉사활동, volunteer activities, so raising significant concern about the representation. For example, as you can see, the textbook often uses images of like African African children experiencing hunger to convey the concept of poverty. So when you teach that, concept or the word, and this is not only reinforce the stereotypical one-dimensional view of African communities, but also frame poverty is a way that emphasizes the victimhood, that helplessness. So by associating expressions with such images, the textbook risk perpetuating a narrative that reduce the identity of this group to more suffering and neglect to show their agency and resilience or diverse experiences. So this approach to teach language through images of impoverished and marginalized people is problematic as it failed to provide a more nuanced or empowering perspective of the group it represents, instead reinforcing a limited and biased view of poverty and social exclusion. So, to sum up, this study analyzed the images and languages and culture in the K-12 Korean textbook and emphasizing the lack of inclusiveness and limited selections and not considerations of local culture and context. We also want to note it is hard to clear cut for each category. Like each category does not stand by itself, but oftentimes it is correlated and it's interdependent. So as a combined entity and construct. And we also want to emphasize detailed and culturally nuanced description and activities are important for this textbook. As K-12, language textbook gives more attention to age and grade differences, so that sensitivity is necessary for developing K-12 textbook. We also want to discuss ideological distance between the Korean government and the Korean American community is quite wide, and Korean language textbooks can become the battleground of those different ideologies. Also, we want to emphasize textbook structure aligning with the system of Korean school years need to be adapted to learners' learning context, like diverse learning context, including like transnational context and their learning trajectories. For example, how they start to learn and what kind of learning background do they have, for example. And also their home language and parent proficiency should be considered as well. We can emphasize some pedagogical implication of this finding. The the finding of this study indicate that textbook designed for overseas Korean students need to be more nuanced and sophisticated, given that the learner population comes from the wide range of background. And also, the analysis highlight the importance of diversity and intercultural competence as qualities that should be embedded, embraced in the educational materials. We also want to highlight that textbooks and textbook analysis impact material development and program development and teacher training, student placement, and learner identity. So it has a great impact on this, which is like a crucial step to implementing DI in language classroom. So that being said, the textbook analysis and textbook itself should be considered or considered as a open resources to many people to make many people access to that materials. The finding also have implication for foreign language education in other language context, suggesting that the need for inclusive and diverse teaching materials. Okay, that's the end of our presentation. Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions and comments, this is our contact information. Thank you for listening.